Welcome, welcome. We'll give a few seconds for folks to join in. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining. We're just waiting for a few seconds for a few more guests to pile in. We have very good attendance, and so we will begin shortly. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. We'll just give a few more seconds before we begin with the program. There's a lot of people joining in from many different parts of the world. So thank you again. We're very glad that you could join us. Just a few more seconds, and then we will begin shortly. We have a very exciting program today, and I hope you'll all enjoy it very much. I am certainly looking forward to it. Okay, so wow, this is pretty good. A lot of people piling in, but I guess, with respect for a lot of you who have joined in early, we will begin shortly. Welcome to this very exciting edition of the Bhutan Foundation webinar. Today, we will talk about the impact of COVID-19 on tourism in Bhutan. What's next? That is the topic. Again, thank you for joining us. I know that that all of you have different pressing time demands, and we certainly appreciate that you chose to be with us today. Before we begin, I think we have a short video before I introduce you to our honored guest today, Mr. Doji Dhratyul, who is the Director General of the Tourism Council of Bhutan. Before we do that, we will just show a short clip of just an introduction, to Bhutan. It's a very nice, exciting short video. Just talks about Bhutan in its special way. So we have pretty good coverage now. A lot of you have joined in, so I guess we will begin with that short video now, and then we'll come back to a formal introduction of the guests.
The Kingdom of Bhutan is located on the roof of the world, the Himalayan mountain range. But if you didn't know where it was, you'd have a hard time spotting it on a map. It is a small country of barely 38,500 square kilometers. Still, this is a country that remains unique and distinct. Due to its unique topography and environmental conservation policies, Bhutan is recognized as the world's only carbon zero country. Forests make up over 65% of the land area, so the country absorbs more carbon than it produces. That is why the Bhutanese prefer to say they are carbon negative. These conditions make Bhutan a biodiversity hotspot that is home to a tremendous diversity of flora and fauna. Historically, it was known in the region as the Valley of Medicinal Herbs. For centuries, the mighty Himalayas protected Bhutan from cultural contact with other nations. As a result, Bhutanese culture has evolved to be unlike any other. Bhutan is the only remaining Mahayana Buddhist country in the world. Its small population of 800,000 people call their land Dhratyul, or the land of the thunder dragon. The rich culture of Bhutan is embodied in its folk songs and music, its sacred mask dances, its religious festivals, the distinctive architecture of its dzongs or temple fortresses, as well as its unique artisanal and cultural traditions. In an age of globalization, Bhutan retains the charm of an ancient world. Bhutanese people are peace-loving and strongly rooted in the philosophy of gross national happiness, which emphasizes a balance of sustainable and equitable economic growth, cultural preservation, environmental conservation, and good governance. For these and many more reasons, Bhutan is known as the lost Shangri-La and is considered to be one of the happiest countries in the world. Currently, Bhutan has grabbed international acclaim and attention for its successful response to the novel coronavirus pandemic. This success has been attributed chiefly to the timely and coordinated intervention of its leaders. His Majesty the King, who was popularly regarded as the People's King, tirelessly toured the country to personally supervise preventive and curative measures. He was aided by a committed government and a concerned clergy led by the Jkempo, or Chief Abbot, who regularly conducted prayers and rituals for the people's safety and well-being.
I'm sure you enjoyed that fabulous introduction to Bhutan. Again, welcome to this exciting edition of our webinar. Today, as we mentioned earlier, we have a special guest and we will talk about the impact of COVID-19 on tourism in Bhutan, what's next. Again, we have guests from all over the world, from different parts of the US, from Europe and Asia, and of course from Bhutan. So thank you for joining us. Of course, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge and express solidarity with the millions that are suffering the recent surge in COVID cases and mortality across South Asia, particularly in India, Nepal, and in the neighborhood. We do not want to seem oblivious to the dire situation at this moment, but we do have a pre-planned event and we would like to go on with it. Fortunately for Bhutan, under the selfless leadership of His Majesty the King, a science-based government supported by thousands of frontline workers and volunteers, and even our spiritual community have largely kept the country safe, and we are immensely grateful for that. Just recently, some of you may have watched the Honorable Prime Minister on CNN sharing Bhutan's story. But of course, we do know that we still have some ways to go. So just before the pandemic struck, Bhutan was voted as the Lonely Planet's #1 place to visit in 2020. In the preceding year, some 316,000 people visited Bhutan, and tourism earnings totaled, about $89 million US dollars. It is estimated that some 50,000 people or so are employed in tourism and its allied businesses. So when the whole industry was upended because of the global pandemic, its ramifications were felt across the board. Loss of revenue, loss of livelihoods, mass unemployment, etc. So many people around the world, many friends of Bhutan, all of you actually, are worried and often, we hear questions, you wonder, so how is Bhutan coping? What are the impacts? And most importantly, what's next? So to answer all of these important questions, it is now my honor and privilege to introduce our special guest today, Mr. Doji Dhratyul, the Director General of the Tourism Council of Bhutan. Mr. Dhratyul has held a very interesting senior government portfolio prior to tourism. Among others, he was the founding director of the Agriculture Marketing and Cooperative Division under the Ministry of Agriculture, which has now become very relevant in terms of food security at this point. And then he was also appointed governor or Dzongda of Gasa district. As he brings with him all of these additional experiences, I'm really looking forward to a conversation focusing on tourism today. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Doji Dhratyul. Welcome, La.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Tshewang yourself and Sring Yangzom and the team at Bhutan Foundation for making this event a reality. It is really a big opportunity and an honor for us to be participating in this event. And my warmest greetings and Kuzu Zangpola to all the participants here, those who are part of the Zoom and also those who are watching the live stream. In particular, I was told that the distinguished, esteemed board directors of the Bhutan Foundations will be also attending. So if they are attending, my respect and greetings to you all too. And of course, to all the ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening and good morning. And with Tshewang and myself, we will try to do our best to keep your time here very meaningful and, if possible, even entertaining. So this will be our effort. So I also look forward to this conversation. Thank you, Tshewang.
Thank you, La. So jumping straight into our discussion for today, Bhutan, for so long has followed its policy of high value, low volume tourism. And so how has that, in your opinion, worked for the country so far?
I would say exceptionally well, actually. For the last 50 years, we have been, from the day one when we started tourism, the policy of high value, low volume was guiding us. And today, we believe, and many others also believe, that we have already made ourselves a brand Bhutan. And especially from tourism point of view, we are seen as an exclusive destination as of now, as still one of the most sought after destination. And especially for many tourists who have been here, they feel that it is privileged that they could visit Bhutan. So therefore, this kind of exclusivity or brand Bhutan that we are enjoying as of now is all because of the very far-sighted tourism policy of high value, low volume. So I feel this has been exceptionally doing well. And in fact, now because of the COVID, amid this COVID pandemic, the realization of the importance of the sustainable tourism, sustainable development, the importance of the personal health and well-being, this policy of high value, low volume is even becoming more relevant globally.
So in continuation to that, for Bhutan, we all know the tourism industry is very important for many different reasons. Of course, most importantly, also for revenue generation next to hydropower, but also for employment across the board. You have guides, drivers, hotel staff, etc. And so in tourism and its allied businesses employ a lot of people in Bhutan. And when that shuts down immediately, because of COVID, of course, it has a big impact. As I mentioned earlier, just prior to the pandemic, in 2019, Bhutan received over 300,000 visitors, and that includes the foreign visitors and also regional tourists as well. However, as the industry was upended since early last year, so what was it like in those first few weeks of the pandemic for the tourism sector?
Oh, yes. I could still remember very well. When the COVID-19 started, I think it started somewhere in December, January 2019. Then, in fact, from the day one, I think somehow our visionary leadership, His Majesty the King, I think knew about this, what is coming. And in fact, I remember attending one of the meetings with convened by His Majesty. That time I remember His Majesty saying that COVID-19, it is just a matter of time. It was sometimes in, I think, February, I think January, February. Said the COVID-19 is just a matter of time. No matter what we do, we won't be able to stop this. So therefore, it's better we start preparing. So therefore, the preparation was actually quite well ahead of time. But on the day, I mean, when the COVID-19 actually came to Bhutan, we were, especially in the tourism sector, especially myself, heading the tourism council as the director general, I was really nervous because the first COVID patient happened to be a tourist, in fact, from America. I think now we all know. So then, of course, then the rest followed. And of course, the other thing is, because the leadership is so well prepared, so far-sighted, what was coming, it was already known. And like everywhere else in the world, tourism was the most affected, even in Bhutan, as I think you have the statistic you have already highlighted in your introductory remark. So everything actually come to a standstill, like till March, because by March, on March 5th, the first COVID patient was detected, and then from immediately, I think a few days after that, we have stopped all the international travel and all. So therefore, the tourism was totally stopped, and then by then we had only about 20,000, I think, in which is including the regional tourists. So the bulk of that was still regional tourists. So therefore, in 2020, it was almost like nil, and even the revenue arrivals, it all dropped down by almost 92-93%. So economically, yes. Now, more importantly, I think the concern of the Golden Throne, His Majesty, was that the people getting laid off, particularly as you've again highlighted, we're estimating around 50,000 are directly engaged in tourism. So therefore, that was the biggest concern. And then through a round of meeting, and I also had the opportunity, some of us, especially those who are directly working in tourism, myself, and also the members of the tour operator association of Bhutan, the hotel association, the guide association, we were actually given quite a number of royal audiences, and then basically trying to discuss and see what we can do to these people who have been laid off. So therefore, series of activities. Of course, the biggest one intervention was to find fiscal and the monetary incentives, interventions that came, and then along that, with that came the Royal Kidu welfare scheme that would basically support all those people who have been laid off with some basic money for sustain their livelihood. And then most importantly, in tourism sector, we have been given a budget to roll out some tourism economic contingency plan, basically to engage those people who've been laid off. So a series of these things happen. And of course, just to answer your question directly, we were very nervous in the very beginning, but then since we have been guided by the leadership from the Golden Throne, somehow we have been brought into track, and then everything so far is going well.
Thank you. That's a very elaborate response. And of course, I'm sure many of our guests today must have read all these, a lot of news coverage, international news coverage on Bhutan's response to COVID. It was really a whole of country response, basically the whole country coming together to respond to COVID in various ways. And of course, led by none other than His Majesty, the King himself, selflessly leading from the front lines, but also an educated and science-based government, everybody coming together, and like you mentioned also, it presents a lot of opportunities for acts of compassion and maybe reimagining tourism as the world reopens.
Yes.
So in terms of all of that, what effort is the Tourism Council making, to support? I think you mentioned that some of those unemployed are being reassigned tasks, or they are somehow employed. But we hear of some interesting programs that the Tourism Council has led, like the Trans-Bhutan Trail, for example, many other, maybe improving infrastructure and so forth, just to adapt to these changing circumstances where there is no tourist coming, but at the same time, maybe this is an opportunity for us to make it even stronger as we reopen. So would you share some of that?
Yes, definitely. And again, This is under the direct command or the visions of His Majesty. So two things are happening actually presently once this COVID has started. Two things. One is this is the time. I mean, while economically and socially, I mean, COVID-19 is really a disaster. I mean, it is a great disturbances. I mean, to the whole world, and Bhutan no exception. But then at the same time, if you look at the tourism, we also see this as an opportunity. Somehow, this COVID-19 is giving us an opportunity. In fact, a much needed break because just before COVID, what is happening is we already started to feel some pressure on tourism. Like for instance, you have already cited the number we had in 2019. We had about 315 I mean 315,000 tourists. So number was already increasing, and also the issue was not just the number. The proportion of those unregulated tourists was increasing. So therefore, COVID came, stand still. So this is the time that we are given an opportunity to relook and also to revamp or whatever measures that we need to take. So this is what we are working presently. So basically, we are relooking the policy, the legislation, the services, the infrastructure, the reskilling. So that is the one biggest area that we are concentrating. The other is again under the royal command. We are also come up with many projects. Basically, again, killing two birds with one stone. Now, one is with those projects. First, bird that getting killed is we are giving an employment to those laid off people working in tourism. Second is those projects are chosen in such a way that at the end of this project is going to contribute towards enhancing the tourist experience when the tourism reopens. For instance, we are doing site management. We are cleaning up the trails, the trekking routes. We are maintaining, and of course, you have also mentioned about the Trans-Bhutan Trail. That is also part of this project, wherein the government we funded that, and almost like 500 people have been engaged in this. Now, this Trans-Bhutan Trail is a trekking or a walking trail which spans from Tshewang from the east to the west, all the way from Tshewang to Ha, spanning about 430 kilometers. And that is used to be traditionally the traditional route in the olden times. And we are basically reviving this. And now, as a tourism product, presently they are getting engaged, they are getting this employment. But once this is completed, it will be a very good tourism product, not only for the international, even for the domestic. So likewise, all these projects. So in a summary, we have spent in the last 1.5 years, we have spent about 200 million ULTRUM in this kind of projects. And we have number of projects. I mean, one example is this. I think I will not go into detail. So basically, we have engaged about 1,500 such type of people who have been laid off.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, that's commendable indeed. And I think to be able to employ that many people on a very important infrastructure project that will go on to help tourism, which then brings me to another point. But before I jump into the next point, just a reminder to all our guests: please do leave your questions in the Q&A box. I forgot to mention that earlier, but we have a long way to go, and I'm sure all of you have so many questions, but please do that, and my colleagues will facilitate that, and we'll try to get to those as many questions as we can. Then coming back to tourism again, domestic tourism. As the land and air borders were sealed, we saw an increase in domestic tourism. A lot of people, of course, it has always been there. People go on pilgrimage, go for Neko, and visit all these. Some young folks go trekking and all of that. But could domestic tourism play an important role going forward? Right now, I think when we cannot get anybody else coming from the outside, but there is this opportunity also to maybe promote and get more of our own people, enjoying and getting to know the nooks and crannies and the different beautiful corners of Bhutan. I think this is an added opportunity for a lot of young Bhutanese to get to know our own country. But going forward, how do you think domestic tourism could be, again, play an important role as well?
Yes, definitely. As you have rightly said, this is a big opportunity. Now, again, this is one of the benefits that we are getting from this crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, because domestic tourism, as you have also highlighted, pre-COVID, it was there, but it was not really recognized. So we really didn't know what was happening. So in fact, right during the COVID, actually the work started just pre-COVID, but we completed a survey in January, February 2020. So after the COVID has come here, and that survey is for the first time domestic and outbound tourism survey for 2019. And we found out that it was already happening. Like in terms of economy, also they're almost like contributing about 7 billion, so which is quite a substantial contribution to the GDP. But now with the COVID, since without the international tourists, people on their own was already happening. It was becoming quite prominent. I mean, we could see domestic tourism, especially in the pilgrimage sector and also in the camping and the trekking. So it was happening. Now we have taken this opportunity. Now during this during this COVID period, we have already kind of formalizing this domestic tourism. We have come up with guidelines, because before that we really didn't have any guidelines, because it was, as I said, it was not recognized. Now we are formalizing this. We are coming up with the guidelines, and also we are trying to develop a special product for domestic tourism. So basically, going forward, we feel now we really have to work hard on this domestic tourism, because now from this COVID we have learned in some other countries, we have learned that because of the domestic tourism, things are still moving in the tourism sector. But like ours, wherein we depend totally on the international or inbound tourism, and we are having a very difficult time, especially in such time. So therefore, this COVID has actually again given us this opportunity to work and develop our domestic tourism. And as you said, a lot of huge potential there, and we have a lot of advantages if our domestic tourism is reinforced or strengthened.
Plus, thank you. Yeah, I think again, a huge potential, untapped potential lies in domestic tourism. Our own small examples from the Bhutan Foundation too. Like for example, we started the Chomolhari, together with the local communities, the park, and all the Chomolhari Mountain Festival almost about 10, 11 years ago. And at that time, we thought, oh, this would be such an attraction for tourists. But the reality has been that actually we have had more locals, attending. I think it's become a time for the locals to come together, have fun, and enjoy, each other, but also enjoy our own cultures. A lot of young Bhutanese would come and visit. Likewise, the river guides of Panbang in Shemgang as well. Initially, we thought, oh, we'll have all these tourists now coming and doing rafting and all that. But it turns out most of their clients have actually been Bhutanese, have been either government offices or corporations or banks coming for their annual retreats and using their facilities. So I think domestic tourism has a big role to play in distributing these benefits to our rural communities as well. So then moving on, a lot of unemployed youth, as we know, have also turned to agriculture. Suddenly several of them are now forming farming cooperatives. There's a special focus on food security, and obviously because with the borders, closed and uncertainty in the food supply chain and all that. So agriculture is, of course, a very important sector that supports tourism through local cuisine, through food festivals, maybe agriculture tourism in the future. And in an earlier incarnation, you were heading this important division of the agriculture ministry, promoting cooperatives and marketing. And I feel right now is the perfect time to visit that. And also I remember from your time, because of your experience in all of this, also as you were the Dzongda, or the governor of Gasa, I remember connecting the farmers, organic farmers, to high-end hotels. I think those are some of the initiatives that you had led the charge very effectively. So what do you see as some of the challenges in our agricultural supply chain that needs fixing at the moment, or what can be done to make it more efficient?
Yes, thank you. Before that, I just like to acknowledge the support Bhutan Foundation has been giving to some of our tourism sectors, like for instance, the rafting of Panbang. I think the river rafters of Panbang, I think both as a supporter and also as a client. I remember some of your members have been also using their services. So and of course in so many other areas also. So thank you very much. Now coming to your question on this agriculture, yes, I think rightly said, I worked in agriculture. In fact, my major portion of my career was in agriculture. So, in the tourism also, in fact, you have again touched on this. Is very recently we had actually bilateral meeting with the Minister of Agriculture that was specifically looking at agrotourism. So, as a post-COVID tourism product, of course, we have been identifying so many other things, but one is definitely agrotourism. I mean, how can we really promote or develop tourism in the agriculture sector? So that is one component which we are working on quite seriously with Ministry of Agriculture. But on the agriculture and the food security, I feel very interestingly, this COVID has actually made us realize that food production for food security is very important because of course, so far, I mean, this year, because I mean, during this COVID, of course, we really didn't have a major issue such, but we could have had actually, because if all the borders are sealed and if we are not going to get our imports, then I mean, there will be a major food crisis. But this time, I think as we are so well prepared and also because of other situations, I think we have not really faced this situation. But I think going forward, I think that's something we really need to keep in mind. So for agriculture, one is the food production for food security. I mean, that is one aspect. But the second one, more important, is, as you have said, the export, the commercial agriculture, because we also have to make money by exporting our products. So in that area, I would recommend strongly that we really have to change our strategy. I think we have to go for a really niche product, like organic products, the superfood, the natural, this kind of thing. And the marketing strategy, I feel, maybe I'm becoming biased. I feel that I like to promote the high value, low volume tourism policy to be implemented in agriculture marketing, because Bhutan can, for all the inherent characteristics of our country, small size, small arable land, we can never be a volume player. So we have to go for low volume, high value, which is the policy in tourism. So I was actually contemplating on this, that this is something that we should also adopt in agriculture marketing and production. And of course, in the marketing, in the whole chain, I think I feel the most important is marketing. As of now, we are actually kind of failing in that. We have not been able to really take advantage of that. So that is one area I would like to recommend or believe in.
Yes. Yes, thank you, thank you. And also going back to your time as governor of Gasa, I think it was also during that time that in this very mountainous district of Gasa, that the Royal Highlander Festival was started. It was started during your time. Of course, it emanated from the vision of His Majesty the King himself. So that annual celebration of Layap culture has become a very big attraction, not only for tourists, but a lot of young Bhutanese as well. So can you share some lessons from such, large scale, interesting cultural events?
Oh, yeah, my specific lessons that I learned, I mean, takeaways from that festival is, first and foremost, I mean, it's not just this event, but of many, I think Highland Festival also taught me that anything that is very significant for the nation, I think the idea emanates from the Golden Throne. I mean, as you rightly said, this vision came from His Majesty that such a festival should be conducted. Basically, the objective for the festival was actually to revive or to reinforce the Highland culture, because by then already the Highland life culture was already kind of on a decline. So, for instance, the yak farming, the yak population was already declining. So, therefore, to revive this, because that is so important for country, the unique culture and the Highland farming culture. So that was the main objective. But of course, then tied with this, of course, the climate change was there. Then, of course, more importantly, the economic part. I mean, through that kind of a festival, the vision was that then people can start coming there, and then the economy will also be generated. And all these objectives were actually met. And to your, I mean, information, we have actually, while I was there, I have hosted 3 festivals. And then after I left, again, in 2019, the 4th Highland Festival was held. So therefore, it was actually happening on an annual basis and very successfully. So other lessons that I learned is when we embark on such a big kind of activity, I feel the participation, the interest of the local communities of utmost importance. Their participation. If their participation is not there, I think in any of such, such community activity may not be possible. And now, how can we ensure the community participation? Now, I feel, especially my experience with Highland Festival, the community participation can be ensured only if the community is convinced that by their participation, by supporting that activity, if they are going to get a direct benefit, especially the economic benefit, because at the community level, they are not really concerned about the culture and this kind of thing. Still they are more after this economic. So therefore, that economic part has to be always there. So this Highland Festival, it really gave them the economic benefit by hosting such a festival in their local area. So these are some few learnings that I have. And in fact, maybe formally that was my first connection with the tourism, because then it started to bring, as you say, domestic. Even the Bhutanese started to come and attend that festival, and of course for the international, it was anyway happening. So my first connection with the tourism was the Highland Festival. So maybe that festival has actually brought me to this to this present job.
Okay, so on that note, of course, at the moment, the surge in COVID cases in the neighboring region poses a serious challenge to opening up, and definitely for tourism. We hope and pray that the situation gets under control, and hopefully the cases subside soon and people get vaccinated. We remain hopeful that we will all come out of this stronger together. The question at the moment on many of our guests' mind is, when can we get over to Bhutan? We have a lot of friends of Bhutan, or who have been to Bhutan many times and who are dying to get back to Bhutan, and we also have many who would like to get to Bhutan for the first time. So how do you imagine that the vaccine rollout and all of those subsequent actions? I know right now Bhutan is waiting for the second dose. So how will all of these impact tourism restrictions in Bhutan? Will there be, because at the moment, of course, I think Bhutan has a very, and rightly so, a strict quarantine requirement of 21 days. So as vaccination rollouts happen, will there be a reduction in that time, in the quarantine time, or has there been any discussion on these front? I think these are all the questions that a lot of us have been getting. Yeah.
No, very true. In fact, we are also asking the same question. When can we reopen? When can we start having tourists back? That is also the same question that we are asking. But fortunately or unfortunately, this is a question that none of us can answer actually accurately. While it is everybody's interest and everybody's wish that it affects everyone, the economy, so many, as you've said, especially in Bhutan, so many people are dependent on tourism. While this is so important, but then at the same time, the most important at this point in time is the health and the safety of our population. Because as we have heard during our school days, I think health is wealth. So if we have a health, then I think the rest of the other things, including the economy, is going to come up. So at this point in time, I think the health is the most priority, and which I think our government is actually doing this. And now, having said this, now even the when and where, as you said, our response to the COVID has been a whole nation approach. Now, even when we are talking about reopening a country, it's not just the tourism sector. Of course, we are so much concerned with the tourism sector, when to open tourism. But then at the same time, when we take this decision, the government takes a decision, I think it has to be consulted across the sectors. Not just tourism, the other sectors. How would they also impact and depend on each other? So therefore, the decision when and how, like for instance, the quarantine measure, whether the duration, the quarantine period, whether it is going to reduce or whether the vaccine passport is going to work. So all this kind of do's and don'ts, and when and how, and this I feel will be consulted and discussed at the government level, at the national level, and then I think they will take a decision. So as of now, I really don't have any specific answer as such, but we have been actually contemplating, hoping that some 1 or 2 months back, maybe by October, this October or September, we could have open up and start getting our tourists after this long gap. But then, as I said, we are not really sure as of now, because as you also again highlighted, things are again becoming very difficult in our neighboring countries, even globally also, even in Bhutan also. I think things are quite not so uh, positive as of now. So therefore, while everybody, including ourselves, we want to open up and then start having a tourist, but then I think the national priority has to be there. So I'm sorry, I am not able to give a very
No,
helpful answer to this. Mm.
no, I think that is probably the most correct answer for the moment. Right? I think we are lucky that we have a government that is, that listens to science, and we have a leadership that sees beyond the immediate, and really looks. I think a lot of these are guided by by health, by evidence, by medical evidence, and so forth, and not politically motivated. I think that's the most sensible way that Bhutan has handled so far, and hopefully we will continue on this path. But of course the battle is far from over. We still have
Yeah.
quite a ways to go before things can comfortably open up. But what do you think that the communities feel about opening up to tourism? I'm sure there is a lot of apprehension. There's a lot of fear. I remember in the beginning part of the pandemic, even up in the mountains, the Sioux area, Chomalari area, generally people are very friendly and very helpful and kind and all that. But I remember at that time when some of my colleagues were traveling, I think they were going up to a glacier to look at some lakes, and just to take some official measurements and all that. As they were passing through, where in other times they can just walk into somebody's house and ask for something like a cup of tea or anything. I think people are more than happy to help you. But at that time, I think that particular group they just wanted a bottle of like cooking oil or something that they ran short of, and but everybody shut their door, and they didn't want to meet or interact with any of the visitors coming from the lowland areas because of this fear of the pandemic. But in the evening, outside their tent, they left a bottle of cooking oil. So the generosity is still there, but of course we are all thrown into this very strange situation that we find ourselves in. So it will take some time, I feel. But do you think that local communities, how will local communities think about receiving visitors?
No, I think you're right. In the beginning, we also got some incidences wherein not only the tourists, even the Bhutanese were not welcomed. I mean, among ourselves, in some remote areas, because that was understandably because the social media. I mean, the messages that comes on, the risk and the danger that this COVID-19 could be, and by then at that time it was so unknown. It was just came up, so therefore people were very careful. So that was true, but even in the tourism sector, we were a bit concerned, and in fact, we tried to also educate, try to create this awareness. But now I think situation has changed. Now, in terms of reopening, I would say there are actually two kind of categories here. One, those who are directly impacted, like for instance, the hotelers, the tour operators, the guides. They are totally dependent on the tourism. Without tourists, I mean, it's almost like they have no work, no. So therefore, for them, I think most of them. I mean, I'll be kind of generalizing. Of course, there will be always exception, but in general, I feel they would like to open. They are willing to open at the earliest possible. But this other group, I mean, who are not directly engaged, they're still a bit skeptical. I mean, first, as I said earlier, at the national level, the majority will be still saying first priority is the health. I mean, first let's take care of health. Let's make everything secure, and then only we can start opening up. Now, when we talk about opening up, we are also talking about the safety of not only our population. We are also talking about, especially in tourism, we are talking about the safety of the tourists, because we have to ensure any tourists that once we start receiving tourists, we have to make sure that they are safe, 100% safe. So we just don't want to take any chance. I personally feel, okay, if we rush to open up, and if you start get tourists, and by chance, if any one of these tourists get COVID, maybe they bring it. I mean, that's a different matter. But after coming here, if they get from here, then that's going to be a disaster. I mean, that's something that we really don't want. And so therefore, for us, more than our own security, I think when you talk about reopening or restarting, it is the security, the safety of the tourists. Because high value, low volume, in essence, in the layman's term, we are giving the utmost, supposed to be giving the utmost priority to the experiences of the tourists. I mean, high value, low volume. Now, high value, low volume, one is that component. The other is we are talking about actually middle path. I mean, based on the principles of the gross national happiness. We in tourism, when we talk about high value, low volume, we are not just talking of revenue and receipts. It is beyond revenue and receipts. And again, we are also talking about less is more. So therefore, if we have to pursue this policy of high value, low volume, the safety, the experience, the good experience, the great experience of tourists is of our utmost importance. So therefore, we really have to be careful. So therefore, it is a mixed. As far as the reopening is concerned.
Yes. Yes, thank you for that. And now maybe shifting on to a slightly different topic, more on the policy side of things. I remember reading in Quincell an article that talked about the new economic roadmap, and whereby I guess it was proposed that reducing the minimum daily rate was suggested as a strategy to improve tourism or to increase hotel occupancy. But wouldn't that really be, undoing too many good things? Like, for instance, reducing the revenue that the government gets right now with this fixed minimum daily rate, which many people think is still too low. They would want to go above and beyond that. But by reducing the minimum daily rate, or even just looking at hotel occupancy as a problem, which I think it's a supply side problem. It's like maybe there's just too many hotels. Why should the policy be changed in order to increase occupancy? As we know, there are too many hotels in one side of the country, but not enough in the other part of the country. And maybe stop building more hotels. But I remember seeing some strong stands from the Tourism Council and many other stakeholders. I just wanted to listen to maybe if you would share your thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you. I think this is an important subject that we are still discussing. And now, as of now, we started with this question of about our policy, high value, low volume. Now, we have been practicing this policy for high value, low volume for the last 50 years. And because of that, today we have this brand Bhutan. And now one of the basic or the most important tool that we operationalize this policy of high value, low volume is through this minimum daily rate. Now, minimum daily rate, basically, it talks about regulated tourism. We are talking about regulated tourism. Of course, the fees has to be paid in advance, the tariff, which covers your accommodation, your food, your transport. So this is all inclusive, but the only criteria or the condition there is, it is being paid in advance, and also that it means it is regulated. Now, without this, we wouldn't have any basis to hold on to this high value, low volume tourism policy. I mean, that is the biggest catch here. Now, what we are seeing is, at this point in time, we just cannot do away with that. If we do away with this high minimum daily package rate, then it will be as good as we are doing away with this high value, low volume policy. And when we do away with this high value, low volume policy, means then basically it is kind of unregulated. But of course, when they propose, we are also talking about if you can regulate. So now, what we are also saying is, in due course of time, maybe after 5 years, maybe after 10 years, when Bhutan, our standard, our services, our self-regulatory, self-monitoring, when all this reaches a level of a developed country, let's say first world standard, because just now we are still in a second world or third world kind of a standard. I mean, people are still not self-monitoring. People are not still accountable. So therefore, we are not able to go into monitor or implement all those rules and regulations. So without having this guarantee of implementing rules and regulations strictly, and then do away this minimum daily rate, it is a disaster. We are going to open up a floodgate for mass tourism. And I mean, that's the high value, low value tourism. In other words, also it means we don't want mass tourism or over tourism. Of course, it has not happened so far, but we are getting some signs this unwanted kind of a tourism coming in. So therefore, we are still saying at this point in time, we means the Tourism Council of Bhutan Secretariat, we are saying, while in due course of time, the minimum daily package, like any other country, like in America, for instance, that kind of system is not there. Anybody can go there and then they can go wherever they can stay wherever they want, But in Bhutan, just now, we cannot afford to do this. We still have some more years to go, and then only we can open up. So this is our stand, and this is mainly because we feel we are not total against this. In the long run, it has to be that way only. We should not have minimum daily rate, yes. But we are not ready at this point in time. That's the point.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think we can only respond to all of these, as bits and pieces come out in Kunsel or where it's there for public consumption. So I think it's not fair also for us to maybe make any enlightened comment on this economic roadmap. But hopefully, just as the Constitution, an important document for the country, was distributed everywhere and discussed and debated, hopefully more people will get to at least comment and see, because I think there's a lot of goodwill that can be channeled to help take these things forward. So a lot of, again, as I mentioned earlier, many old friends of Bhutan who are yearning to come back to Bhutan, new visitors dying to get to Bhutan for the first time. I think tourism for Bhutan is also beneficial, I think not only in terms of revenue, but for the rest of the world to hear the story of Bhutan. I think the minute you get off the plane, I've heard many people say that, it just feels different. It's not like any other city, that's getting homogenized across Asia or elsewhere. They all begin to look the same. The architecture looks the same. But Bhutan is uniquely different. I think there's a lot that the nature and culture of Bhutan has to offer to the rest of the world, and which is also an attraction for Bhutan. So we have a lot of good friends of Bhutan waiting and watching on the sidelines. It helps that the country's response to COVID, a whole of country approach, has been largely successful. Again, thanks to great leadership emanating from His Majesty and the whole country's support. Although we still have quite a ways to go, But as the world opens up again and Bhutan begins to get visitors, I remember you mentioning over-tourism. So should we be worried about over-tourism? Especially not necessarily all across the country, but in popular hotspots such as Tiger's Nest or the Memorial Chorten, for example, where both locals and a lot of tourists make it a must-go or a must-visit destination. So do you worry about, or should we be worried about over-tourism in some of these places?
Yes, straight away, yes. We won't be facing any of these major concerns now because, as I said, this COVID has actually given us this much needed time out. So what we're doing is presently we are doing a couple of things which will prevent all this kind of issues that we have just highlighted: the over-tourism, the overcrowding, the mass tourism. Now, a couple of things. First is the number itself was not really an issue to us, like 315,000 in 2019. The number itself is not an issue. But what was really issue was the unregulated part. The unregulated tourists the number was increasing. And that was really leading to what appears to be over-tourism, what appears to be a crowding mass tourism. But once we regulate this, then I think the number we should be able to manage. That is one. So therefore, we are moving towards already, and some steps have taken. For instance, as of now, officially it is not there now. Of course, we have not implemented now since last July 2020, we have enacted, Parliament has enacted the Tourism Levy Act of Bhutan, which basically says now even the tourists from the regional countries who used to have a different kind of a regime, they actually didn't have to pay any fees or kind of regulation was applied to them. So tourists coming from India, Bangladesh, and Maldives, now they have to start paying once they start coming here after tourism opens. They have to start paying a concessional sustainable development fee of 1,200, which comes to around 17 USD per person per night. And whereas the other group still pays about $65. So it is still a concessional, but along with that, they also have to now start practicing the other tourism practices, like they need to have a tourist guide, they need to be routed through a Bhutanese tour operator. So some of this will also start implementing. So basically, we have started to make a move towards mainstreaming the so-called regional tourists to one tourist. And our tourism policy which has been just recently the return policy. Of course, the policy we had for the last 50 years, high value, low volume. Now we have packaged that into a written document, and which was approved quite recently in January. Now this policy actually envisions that by 2030, we want to fast track that, but at least in the policy it says by 2030, Bhutan will have just one tourist. We will not have any other categories. So regardless of your nationalities, from wherever part of the world you come from, any tourist coming to Bhutan will be a tourist, and they will be paying the same thing, and they will be given the same. More importantly, more than what we get, because we were really feeling very bad actually, because tourist is a tourist, but then at the same time, because of these two regulations, one is not getting regulated, others getting regulated. So in the eyes of some people, they feel that, for instance, that those who are paying dollars, I mean, we call it as the MDPR, they get a VIP treatment, but other tourists, they are totally left on their own without any care kind of thing. And so therefore, it was always, we have been almost like criticized that our tourism policy is discriminatory. One group is being treated like a VIP, other group is totally on their own, and they have been also having. So therefore, both for the tourists and for our country, we want to mainstream, we're going to have one tourist. So that is one big part that we are doing. So therefore, we regulate it. The second part we are doing presently during this COVID time is we are trying to improve this, the services, the standards, the management. For instance, as I said earlier, we are trying to do the site management. For instance, Tshewang, we are already doing some work on there. Tshewang, I think some of the participants here who have been to Bhutan before, recently, in the recent past, you must have experienced that it was already getting overcrowded, and also both the riding ponies, the horses, and the people, the human well, using the same route. Now, when we reopen, we have already completed that work. The horses will be going through a different route. The people will be traveling. So similarly, so many other sites also we are trying started to work on managing. So therefore, in other words, I think those concerns that you have just highlighted, we should be able to address them actually.
Lasta, thank you again. Thank you for that very interesting response. Certainly, I think regional tourism, plays a big role. I think that's a big portion of the number of tourists that are visiting Bhutan are actually regional tourists. So definitely catering to them and managing, I guess, would be a good solution as well. But before we end the conversation part of it, of course, we will quickly try to get to. We have been getting a lot of questions in the Q&A box. But finally, before we end our conversation with our guest, on a more personal note, several years back, I think some guests may not know this, others may know this. So several years back, in 2013, you wrote a novel, Escapades, which was quite popular among young Bhutanese. In a note about the author, you describe yourself as an accidental author. So will we see another book soon?
Actually, yes. Actually, I've been working on 2 books, but it has been quite some time now. Almost for the last 5 years, I've been doing it, but for somehow, I think I'm still waiting for an accident now. I think an accident has to occur so that I can start publishing. So actually, I'm working on 2 books. Yes, one fiction and one non-fiction actually.
Okay, so you all heard it first here. Look out for additional books coming
Yes.
from the Director General of the Bhutan Tourism Council. So with that, thank you very much for your time and for this conversation where we try to at least elucidate some of the happenings with regards to tourism, especially the impact by COVID and then reopening and so forth. With this, we end the conversation part of the program, but we will now get to a couple of questions quickly. One question is there an itinerary for the Trans-Bhutan Trail?
Yeah, yes, we can say yes. So now it is more or less ready. Of course, I'm also very much tourism is also very much engaged in this project. But of course, just for information, Canada Bhutan Foundation is also, they are leading this project. So therefore, I know fully that the itineraries will be there. And in fact, we are planning to launch this sometime this September, October actually. So yes. and this will be all digitized. I mean, so everything will be available.
There's a lot of questions on reopening. I think many people, I think we have several questions saying that when Bhutan will reopen. I think you have already answered that to the most part. I think it's really in the hands of what happens in the region, but also medical guidelines that the government will come out with, and so forth. Some people are asking that they are hoping to come to Bhutan by October. Will that be a good enough time? Will Bhutan be open by then?
Yes, as I said earlier, initially we were hoping that at least by September, October, we would start getting our first group of tourists. That is our plan. But as of now, going by the situation in the neighboring countries and elsewhere, it seems a bit too difficult. And also, if I may add on the reopening question, even the reopening would also depend on the situation elsewhere. I mean, especially our neighboring countries, the transiting countries, and the globally. In Bhutan, okay, maybe we are all now vaccinated, 100% we are safe. But then, if things are not right elsewhere, even if we open up, I think the inbound tourists will be still difficult. So our opening and restarting time would also be very much dependent on how situations will evolve in other parts of the world. But our desire is also to open at the earliest possible. I mean, if you can, but under the situation of the full protection and full safety of the population and of the tourists. We really don't want to take any chance.
Another question from, I guess this is from Facebook. Would TCP ensure all guide and driver receive full vaccination with certificates issued before they could be allowed to service the tourism industry?
Yes. In fact, this we have discussed, and anybody working, of course, vaccination has been made quite voluntary here. I mean, it was not mandatory, but of course, almost the majority, 90%, I think more than that has been vaccinated, but it's still left voluntarily. So, but in the tourism sector, we said anybody working in tourism is mandatory. That we are making mandatory, but general population still is up to them. But in tourism sector, everyone is mandatory if you're working, so they have to be vaccinated.
Another question asks, I'm trying to figure out which entry point will be feasible. Do you think Singapore might be the best option as an entry point, for connecting flights?
Yeah, as of now, we also feel Singapore is the best, I think, because we have a direct flight from Singapore to Bhutan. So we also feel, I mean, that is the best one. And in fact, we want to explore that. I mean, how can we increase the frequency of the flights between Singapore and Bhutan? So definitely, I agree.
Yes. One more question here, I guess. Again, this is more on domestic tourism. How long will it take to come out with the guidelines for domestic and inbound tourism? I don't know what that inbound meant, but domestic tourism, I guess.
Domestic tourism, we already have a guideline now developed during this COVID time, and now it is already available. I don't know who is asking, maybe Bhutanese, most probably. So this is already here. It is already on our website. If not, you can always contact us if somebody who is asking the question is a Bhutanese.
So we are a little past the hour. We'll take a few more questions, and then we will call it a day. The next question is the government considering to open slowly by allowing private jet visits before opening to regular flights or opening the land borders? Some island countries are doing this.
In fact, we worked on this also. I mean, during COVID time only. I mean, we were trying to explore or work on a possibility of getting a. Now that would again, to some people, they really don't like this. Then as if we are really targeting only the high end. Of course, our destination is the high end. I mean, exclusive. That's the fact. But then we were also within that. Also, we are trying to experiment. But of course, nothing has happened. But one possibility was really target the high end. They can come with their own chopper. Then once they're in the country, they can just move in their own circle. So basically, everything is kind of in quarantine mode. So that also we have been discussing. But there's a possibility. But as of now, we have not taken any decision. but we have deliberated on that also.
Yes. Another kind of follow-up question from the Singapore question was then, if Singapore is a safer option for entry into Bhutan, then is there a plan to increase flights from Singapore?
Yeah, so as of now, no decisions taken, but as I said earlier, this is definitely one area that we want to explore, increasing the number of flights and the connectivity, especially with Singapore. Yes.
I guess let me just per the Prime Minister's talk on CNN, he mentioned Bhutan is awaiting the second dose and need to get that in the next few weeks. Any idea when Bhutan will get the second dose and where is it coming from?
Sorry, I have no answer.
Yeah.
I won't be able to answer.
Not necessarily a tourism question, but sure.
Yes.
I guess we're all waiting for that. The first dose, of course, was thanks to generosity of the government of India. But we know that the government is reaching out through various channels, including COVAX and others, for the second dose as well, including, of course, the government of India. One last comment, I guess, from somebody in California. The comment says, Cynthia Rosenfield from California writes, his book or your book helped me escape from the first wave of the pandemic here in California. I'm his biggest non-Bhutanese fan. so you have a fan in California.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So we are a little bit over the hour, 7 minutes past the hour. I guess thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure many people have a lot of important questions. You can write to us. You can find more information on the Tourism Council at from their website. Check them out. Also from our various platforms as well. If you would like specific questions answered, please don't hesitate to contact us. Again, I would like to thank on behalf of the Bhutan Foundation. We would like to thank Mr. Doji Dhratyul, the Director General of the Tourism Council of Bhutan, for sharing his time with us. I know you are probably asked to come on many Zoom calls and many webinars and so forth. Thank you. Certainly, we enjoyed all of the information that you shared with us tonight, and we look forward to seeing all of you, all the guests and everyone else on our next event coming up in the future. Again, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much. And let me also take the opportunity in wishing everyone a very good and safe health and wealth and happiness. And I think we as a world community, I think we have to come together. And as the COVID-19 has taught us, I think we have to be just one, I think. So I'd like to wish everyone very safe health and happiness for all times to come. Thank you.